Recording is started.
Great. So thank you everyone for joining. We have 42 people in the meeting today, so that's a great turnout. We really appreciate everyone being here to get an update and to talk through the ESInet project. So Daryl, do you mind pulling up the agenda? We did modify the agenda a bit for today's meeting. Great. So we'll go ahead and officially call the meeting to order. Again, from roll call, we're not taking roll call on this because of the number of people attending. So you do need to sign in so we can count that you are attending. And then we're going to go ahead and talk through the project update. So Cindy, I can display the project tracker if that is what you would like me to put up, if that's helpful. I have the one from Monday's call.
Sure.
Or Daryl, since you've got control of the screen now, do you want to display that one, or is it easier for you if I do? It would actually be the project tracker. There we go.
Here I am talking away with mute on. This is the one you meant, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So Cindy, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you to give an overall update on the project and where we're at.
Great, thank you. So since we last met in July, we have migrated Morgan County, Jefferson County, Castle Rock, Douglas, Parker, Sterling, Fremont, Sedgwick, and Durango, La Plata. So those are the PSAPs that have completed migration since our last meeting. We have a number of PSAPs upcoming. So we've got a very busy month ahead. We're actually on testing Summit County right now, which doesn't show on here because we squeezed them in yesterday. But we are hoping to migrate Summit County in about an hour.
Oh.
So they're working on alley cables right now. We just completed network failover 5 minutes ago, and we're on a break while they get their alley cables ready. And then we'll be looking to move Summit County. Casey County is scheduled to test and migrate tomorrow. And let's see. We have also, since we met on Monday, rescheduled El Paso onto 8. Sorry, let me pull up my calendar. 8/17 and 8/24 for the two clusters at El Paso.
And Cindy, just remind me, it's going to be their nodes that are going to go on 8/17 and then all their remotes on 8/24.
Their nodes and 3 of the smaller PSAPs, Fort Carson, Peterson, and Cripple Creek.
Okay.
And then the bigger sites, Colorado Springs and the county, will go the following week.
Okay. Okay, that's great.
We also have Phillips County coming up. Not sure on the schedule for Phillips County yet. We've got them right now targeted for the 17th, but we have a meeting with Phillips County and Central Square tomorrow to talk about the schedule and see if that is doable from a support perspective.
Okay.
And then we go to Kit Carson, and Kit Carson did move to a SIP implementation where they're placing the ESInet equipment today, and we are planning to test and migrate them on the 20th. And then we have...
Yeah, the only other one would be for just Washington. Yuma, and then Lincoln, and that would wrap up, or I guess Washington Yuma, that would wrap up everything in August. And you were looking for some contacts out at Washington Yuma?
Yeah, I think we had, I think we got our contacts. I think we're moving forward there. The equipment was installed last week.
Okay.
And so we're scheduled to test and migrate on the 24th right now with Washington Yuma. And not showing on the schedule yet, but I believe we're going to cut Arapahoe County and all of their sites this month too.
Okay, so do you have any idea? I mean, there's a lot already in August.
Yeah.
Just from a resource perspective, I mean, that's great news. We definitely want to get Arapahoe migrated over. Just from a resource perspective, do you know what week you're looking at? The third or fourth week?
The week of the 24th. It looks like we're going to do pre-migration testing with them on the 19th, which was the date we originally had reserved for El Paso. But now that El Paso is going to be the 17th and the 24th, it frees up the 19th to work with Arapahoe County on pre-migration at all their sites.
Okay, great. Hopefully that will.
And then I think we'll probably end up with a couple of long days that last week of August, where we're up early doing cuts for Arapahoe and up late doing pre-migration testing at Larimer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to see how the schedule works out, where we get to from there.
Okay. Great. And then I guess from a schedule perspective, the next group of PSAPs would be those that are scheduled in September.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any changes or concerns you want to call out for the group in September? And I don't expect you to go through one by one since we do that on our weekly calls. And just for everybody to be aware, when you get close, we start setting up weekly calls so you get very specific details about your project. But just for that overall group in September, do you have anything for them?
The only overall update, Westel PSAPs and CallWorks PSAPs that were in September are now officially moving into the TBD bucket because we don't yet know when we're going to have clearance to move forward there. And we are going to set up a call with all the Westel PSAPs to talk about your project and schedule and where we're at. And then also with the CallWorks PSAPs on where Motorola and that lab testing is at and how they want to move forward so we can get everybody migrated.
That's great, Cindy. And so you were going to work on getting those dates from when we spoke on Monday.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything yet. Are you just trying to look at calendars and find some open spots to then propose that? Or were you planning on doing like a doodle poll so we can get the input for the PSAPs?
I was just looking at calendars.
Okay.
But I can, yeah.
Okay. Okay, and then our next group of PSAPs would be in October, and it seems like we've got some good space there to be able to move additional PSAPs perhaps into October.
Yes. That we've got room in October to add, as well as November. I think we're going to be able to open up more test dates in November as well. So hopefully we can have the call with Westel group and with the CallWorks group and get a plan and actually get everybody on the schedule.
Cindy and Kimberly, do we kind of want to talk to the group about what that plan, what we're talking about for that plan to be? And essentially for the CallWorks folks, that's the uncertainty of it being validated for SIP at this point in time, which is why we would want to have that call to kind of clear the air on that it's uncertain based upon what we know today, and to shift some of those early ones that were on the calendar to have an install going, that we would look at putting PGM on it until at such time the SIP becomes available, and kind of play with the schedule that way. But that's what we're thinking is an alternative to try to keep things on somewhat of a target here to keep the schedule in place. Did I say that, Kimberly and Cindy, accurately?
Yeah, I think the big picture for everybody on this call, what we talked about on Monday, is the struggle with the relationship between the CP equipment and what it can do in the ESInet and the CenturyLink deployment of that ESInet in Colorado. And so understanding that the CallWorks Intrado testing didn't go as planned or designed, and so they're not ready for a SIP deployment. So we definitely need to regroup with these PSAPs and create a path forward. What that path looks like, I'm not quite sure. That's where that call really needs to happen so we can get them on the schedule, because that all the CallWorks PSAPs have been moved out of the schedule for several months now. So definitely want to look at how we can do that, and if that's going to putting in an LNG and then moving them over to SIP later. I know we talked a little bit about that, but there's a pretty significant financial impact from my understanding of what Cindy said of some of that hardware alone is $10,000 a piece. So I didn't think CenturyLink was confident that they wanted to go to an LNG deployment for all of these and do the PGM for all of the CallWorks PSAPs yet. Because I believe on Monday, Cindy pointed out, we go down that path, we order equipment, and then CallWorks is successful with their testing. So that's where I think we definitely need to regroup and take this offline and really understand time frame and all the different moving pieces for this, all these PSAPs. Did I summarize that pretty
I
quick?
think initially we were looking at maybe a leapfrog approach, where we pre-order equipment we know we need for PSAPs going PGM into next year, and we use that equipment for the CallWorks PSAPs to get them up and online. And then if CallWorks becomes compatible, we can pull the equipment and move it to the PSAPs we know are staying PGM for a while. And if not, we just order more equipment.
Right, that's correct.
Yeah, so I think that call is going to be really critical, and I would recommend that we also engage and get Intrado involved, especially the group that would be responsible for or has worked with them on the lab, so we can have a report on all sides of how that went. If there is anybody at Intrado that was involved in that testing too, I think that would be great. And we discussed having a similar call with Westel, and I believe on Monday we also concluded we probably should do the same with Solacom.
Yeah.
So really we need to break off and have 3 CPE specific calls with the team to really talk through what's going on with the CPE deployment and how to make it successful in this ESInet environment.
Great. Yeah, I think the Westel conversation is, we're close to moving forward with Westel, but there's some concern as to whether all of the Westel PSAPs are really going to go direct to SIP or not. Right now, that's how we have them flagged, but it sounds like we need to have a deeper conversation to make sure everyone understands what that really means for them, and if they have the equipment or budget to do that, if they need to buy more equipment.
Right, and I definitely think that's where the project team needs to come in and have some more detailed conversations. Even though site surveys were done, I think you guys need to talk through all of that with the Westel PSAPs and really understand, because I don't think all of them are able to go SIP right now. There's definitely a cost impact to their PSAPs, so we need to talk through that.
This is Daryl. Kimberly, I've got a couple questions for Cindy before we move on. Okay, making sure I'm not muted. Shriver Air Force Base. Shriver Air Force Base, I know that earlier on in the process, you were having some difficulty getting a hold of a good contact there or setting up a reliable communication point of contact. Is that improved? Are you guys where you need to be with Shriver at this point?
Yes.
Okay,
So
good.
we've had good conversations with them and getting everything figured out with Shriver. The only site we're still struggling with, and it seems to be an addressing issue, is Buckley.
Okay.
And they've been responsive, the site there. It's a matter of figuring out how to get the order through the system. The addresses aren't matching up.
But you do have a good point of contact there now to work that out with.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I think I was thinking of Buckley, not Shriver. And then the other question is, I've been reading a lot about the effects of coronavirus on the supply chain for electronics gear. And I want to make sure that we're not anticipating any delays. You were talking about earlier having to order, if you had to order more PGM modules, for instance. Are you seeing any delays in getting orders filled for electronics necessary for these migrations?
We have seen some delays. So we worked with Entrado a couple of weeks ago to go through the schedule for the next couple of months and make sure we had PGMs on order. They actually came in faster than we were expecting. But that's why it's critical we have that conversation with the Westel group and the CallWorks group, because we definitely don't have spare equipment right now. We've got enough to meet the list that's been identified through September and October.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we want to get orders placed for more equipment as quickly as we can, just to avoid any potential delays on equipment shipping.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great. Appreciate the questions. And then after October, we move into November. And can you remind me when CenturyLink has the blackout?
When we have what?
The blackout dates for the
Yep.
tax, you mean?
Yep.
I don't have firm blackout dates yet, but I know the week of Thanksgiving, and then the week before Christmas through New Year's is our typical blackout. And I've requested the official actual dates, but that's what I'm planning for now. But that would allow us to open up a 3 more weeks for testing than what we have currently scheduled.
Yeah, we were very conservative when we first set up that schedule, but we are going to push some of the holes in that schedule now that we're narrowing what we have as a blackout just to those dates that Cindy has. So that gives us some room to do some extra work.
Okay, great. So anything that you're tracking with the rest of the PSAPs that have tentative migrations already scheduled that haven't been moved into the to be determined group?
I don't believe so.
Okay, and then we've already talked through the ones that are pending that we're trying to work through with that have been dumped into scheduling later, and I guess the one that we talked about, we have a couple that we discussed on Monday, but just wanted to bring forward Vail. That's a Patriot issue that you guys are working on, trying to resolve. A lot of tech hours went into that. Do you have an update from Monday by chance?
Yes, Entrado sent an email yesterday wanting us to look at a couple of settings, and as silly as it sounds, potentially a volume setting that's preventing the system from hearing the busy tones come back. So I've got that out to have the techs take a look at, but it may be something as simple as a volume issue.
A volume issue on the setting so they can't hear it, not a volume, a call volume.
Right.
Okay, got it.
Because the tech can plug in and hear the KP48 test tones come through, and the Patriot system respond with the appropriate busy tones.
Mm-hmm.
But the network elements aren't hearing that busy tone come back.
Okay, great. Well, hopefully that'll be the smoking gun. So from a schedule perspective, Cindy, do you have anything else that you wanted to bring forward and discuss with the schedule?
I think we're officially full for August. But other than that, I think, no, we're just continuing to do our best to work the PSAPs that got moved to TPD for one reason or another back in as quickly as we can to keep the schedule on track. And I think we're hitting a much better pace this month in getting PSAPs migrated, which I think is good.
Yeah, no, it's great. I do think there's that balance of too much and pulling from the same resources, and then the attention to the detail on something so critical like this when they are switching between so many different projects. So, and that's an item we can talk about when we go through the discussion item spreadsheet, but just wanted to throw that out there. We continue to just get concerned. Obviously, we need to move the project forward, but there's only so many resources to be allocated to the project as well.
Right.
Okay, and then before we move on, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to see if any of the PSAPs or authorities have any questions as it relates to the schedule of what Cindy just covered. And while people are coming off mute, we did have a question about when we're talking about some of these break-off conversations. We mentioned vendors. Will the PSAPs authorities be invited? And absolutely. We can't talk about your project without you on the project. So need to make sure that you're available to be able to attend that critical breakout call. Okay. So if you have questions, you can jump in at another time and ask them, but we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. So we've already covered open items, but Cindy, do you have anything that needs immediate attention that you may have somebody on this call that you need to address, or anything you need to put out to the group that needs immediate attention?
No.
Okay.
I was going through the list in my head. No, I think we're good right now.
Okay. And then we have the open items. So we'll go into old business, and that's the open items for the migrated PSAPs. And so Daryl, if you want to pull up that discussion item spreadsheet, that would be great. Perfect, thank you. So we have a couple of items on here that we've added, or that I've gone back through and I just put out in red so we can talk through them. So I'm going to start with item number 84, which was first identified with one of our early on adopters, Bretza, and that had to do with the location of the pad device and then getting that pad device moved. And then that was brought up again from a recent deployment with the Douglas County PSAPs and the location of the pad device. So I do think that there could be a gap of explaining when that equipment is being racked, what it is and what it's used for. And in that way, if a PSAP or authority would like that equipment moved, they're identifying it at that time, because it could be a pretty simple move that can be tackled between equipment being installed to actual migration. So that pad is where it needs to be. But I just felt like, since this conversation and question of this equipment has come up more than once, and we started that conversation back in February, that there could be a gap there, Cindy, that maybe the team who's installing or the project team can kind of walk through that when they're on site. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, but I think it's the Make Busy switch itself that's a concern. And unfortunately, that's CenturyLink is installing that, and we can't install it past essentially the DMARC. My understanding is it's a simple 2-wire switch, so it can be moved. But it's basically whoever would normally extend the circuit at the PSAP who's managing the CPE equipment would need to extend it. That we're not supposed to install it past that DMARC line. So we put it in right there next to the pad itself with all of our other equipment. It comes back to who's managing that PSAP. CenturyLink can certainly move it, but for the majority of PSAPs, it would be a time and material quote to send that to a different spot, and it may be far cheaper for them since it's a simple, my understanding, 2-wire. It may be simpler to have their existing vendor move it.
Okay, so CenturyLink will still identify it, maintain it, support it if another vendor is moving their equipment outside of their demarcation.
Well, it's just a switch. The equipment stays where the equipment is. But yes.
Okay. That seems a little odd. I mean, typically in our environment, if it's your equipment, you don't let other people touch or move or manage your equipment because that's your equipment. But you're saying that if PSAPs want to engage their CPE vendor to move it to another location, they can hire them, cable them, and get it moved, and CenturyLink will continue to support the Make Busy switch.
Yes, I know that some PSAPs have already moved it. Broomfield and Westminster. I think Westminster had Converge One move theirs. I know Boulder was looking to have theirs moved by Entrado.
So what I would like to get to is this being a decision that's made in advance of a migration versus after a migration, because if we know where that demarcation and where that equipment is going to be racked, which that should be decided during the site survey. So I think this is for everybody, PSAPs authorities, our CPE support folks. We all need to understand all of that equipment, including that Make Busy switch that's associated with that pad device, is located at that CenturyLink demarcation. And if you want it moved to a different location outside of a room, we should be able to know that and make that decision so that work can be commissioned, scheduled, ready to go, so it's not having to be done after the fact. So I think there's an education coordination opportunity here.
Yeah, I know we've definitely, at pre-migration, we're making an effort to make sure the PSAP contacts knew where that switch was. But I can ask the techs when they're doing the install to make sure they engage that PSAP contact and walk them through that. Then have
Cindy,
that conversation if they want to move it.
Yep. I think that would be great, Cindy, to be able to have that person explain this is the new Make Busy switch and this is where it's located. If you want it moved, you need to talk to your CPE vendor or CenturyLink to provide a quote, or your CPE vendor can do it and move it, but this is where we install it. So we'll walk through a little explanation so then they have that gap between pre-migration and migration to get it extended.
Okay. I'm just writing that note down.
We seem to keep circling back to this, so I want to see if we can't clean this conversation up a bit. And then I notated on here the fact that what we've already discussed with the phone call, that we need to have a breakout call with CallWorks. And then you'll see there's also a note towards the bottom about Westel and Solacom as well. And I think with Solacom, we have an opportunity. This cable that was made for CSP Alamosa, just what else do we need? Was that successful? Making those in advance, getting them. So just some additional dependencies we have with Solacom that we want to talk through.
Yeah. And I know Wes has already looked ahead and reached out to ask them to make the cable for Pueblo PD while they were at it. But yeah. I've got on my list of calls with Solacom, Westel, and the Motorola CallWorks group. And I think after we're done with Summit County this afternoon, I can get some date options out to everyone for those.
Okay, great. And then the other item on here, that we were tracking is that change fee from moving from PGM to SIP. And we know that CenturyLink has a fee associated with that. And then Tim Goodwin sent out an email to everybody. So everybody should have received that email identifying that that fee will be waived for a period of time to help the project continue to move forward. So I know that there's still some concerns around a charge even after the fact, but right now, at least that's not on the table that we have to worry about, but we're still tracking that item for further discussions later. And then the other item is the tariff billing. So just a reminder to everyone that you shouldn't be paying for 2 tariffs. Once you migrate over to the new ESInet, that's when you're on the new tariff. And so all of that overlap billing was going to get cleaned up. Do you guys have an update on that, Cindy or Wes or Tim?
No, this is Wes. Only that Oscar is working on those first initial ones, and of course, well, yeah, and we have some other discussions going on. So Oscar Turek is focusing on the first couple of those that there were some overlap on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, going forward, Kimberly, we put in a new process, and when PSAP's cut, I'm actually sending a note to Oscar and one of our other internal contacts, letting them know that we need to stop billing on the old Alley EM trunks, the old billing, legacy billing tariffs.
Right, and this is a good one. It's important to remember that applies when you stop, when a PSAP stops using the old E911 service and E911 trunks. If there's some overlap and they want some level of services such as Alley to continue for a time after the NG911 is up, then both services are up and they haven't cut over and stopped using the E911 delivery system, then both charges will continue to apply for that transition period.
So I'm not quite sure. I'm tracking that. Obviously, we've got some PSAPs right now that are in that situation where they haven't been able to fully migrate Alley over. So you're saying in their situation, they are going to get double billed. And then when they get double billed, is the legacy tariff only going to bill for a portion since it's just the Alley that has remained?
Well, the way that the tariff is phrased and is set up, all the charges are charged together, and they are priced out independently, but they are charged together.
Mm-hmm.
So it's difficult. The problem is that we're still incurring the costs of keeping up 2 services at that point. We designed this so that we would be able to, so that there was a clean break between the services. And when there's not a clean break, then we're actually increasing our costs over just providing the NG911 to a particular PSAP. So what I'd like to avoid is doing a cost-based examination of just a few PSAPs for that transition period. That's not going to help anybody because determining the costs is going to be expensive. And if it's just for a few PSAPs for just a short period of time, most of the measures of cost would be so high that it would be unreasonable. So ideally, folks would be using fully the NG911 solution for all call and Alley and other delivery. But if, we're trying to work with our customers here to make sure that, they have flexibility based on their configuration for that transition period, but that flexibility can't come for free.
So Tim, this is Jackie.
Yeah.
So since you're billing those items on the existing tariff or the old legacy system separately, that would be difficult just to bill for the Alley. since it's already detailed on the bill, I'm confused.
The tariff language, and let me pull it up here. The tariff itself says you have to have them all.
Okay, so the legacy tariff basically says it has to be bundled, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Thank you.
And also keep in mind, this project closing in will be done hopefully by the end of February, and that old network's going away. So that transition should be focused on making the clean break.
And I do believe that's everyone's.
So it's 9. The tariff reference is in section 9.2.1.d.9. So that's 9.2.1.d.9. And then footnote 2 says an E911 customer may not purchase Alley without also incurring charges for selective routing and transport service. And that's the way the tariff is constructed.
Which tariff are you referring to, the new one or the legacy?
That is the legacy, because it's in 9.2.1.d.9.
I would point out that the legacy tariff technically no longer exists. You replaced it with the new tariff.
No, it exists. I'm reading from what's on file with the commission right now. I mean, we're still providing and billing E911 service for most of the state right now. And we've transitioned several PSAPs, but yeah, our Colorado PUC tariff number 25 has several sections in it. 921 is the E911 service, and 925 is the NG911. But since both are still active, they are both still tariffed and both still exist, and we're both still billing for both services.
So, Tim, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
From our meeting in July, you stated that there shouldn't be an overlap on the tariff and that the PSAPs will not have to pay for 2 services. And what you were probably meaning then is if a PSAP migrates over and they migrated over 100%, they migrated over, it's a clear stop and start. And what you're saying now is if a PSAP hasn't migrated 100% over, there's an overlap of like a service like Ellie, and CenturyLink's position is that they will incur double tariff billing until they 100% migrate over.
That's correct. Yeah. In order to avoid the double billing, you have to migrate
And what about the fact that CenturyLink has offered early on to keep the legacy network intact for 30 days? And it wasn't a request of us. We were simply asking, how long do we have the ability to roll back for? And CenturyLink said, we'll keep the legacy up and available to roll back in your particular deployment, anyone's deployment, just for about 30 days, I think is what the commitment was. So in essence, CenturyLink offered a 30-day overlap without tying tariff to it.
The difference is that, what we're promising to keep up, there's a difference between the infrastructure and the service, and we'll certainly keep the infrastructure intact for 30 days, but just leaving the infrastructure in place doesn't incur much cost for us. We're not doing anything. I mean, it just stays, the only cost is that we can't use that infrastructure for other customers, but that's a very limited, very low cost. So leaving the infrastructure in place is pretty low cost. Continuing to provide service over that infrastructure and making sure that we're getting Alley there in a public safety level of reliability over those circuits and through that database and all that kind of stuff, that is a cost, a service that has cost, and that's a lot different story than just leaving everything, the infrastructure intact for 30 days. Continuing to provide the services is different, because in migration, we want to migrate so that the alley is not being delivered through two different infrastructures. It's not good, it's not sustainable, it's not reliable. We want to get it on the one infrastructure, the NG911 infrastructure, and for us to be delivering that on two different infrastructures to the same PSAP is problematic and costly. So I don't think this solution is particularly, I mean, from we didn't talk about this in the lead up to this. Nobody said, hey, nobody said we want to do alley over E911 and everything else over NG911 or the ESInet. Nobody said that. And so this is a new thing. The solution here is not ideal from a technical perspective, from a sustainable reliability perspective, and from a billing perspective. I'm really not fond of any of it, because I think you guys make decent points that, okay, well, you're supposed to cut over, and there's a separate element for alley within the tariff structure, although there's also that footnote there. I don't like it. I don't like the situation. It's not something we saw, but I don't see a way around. Also, I don't see a way around it from how the tariffs are currently constructed. Plus, we do incur costs, and it is not a good solution going forward to have it done that way. So we're trying to be as flexible as we can. We want folks to migrate as soon as they can. And
so Tim, I just want to make sure I understand when this situation would be. And first of all, you're correct. The old tariff did not go away. It was a different numbering to put in the ESInet tariff. But are you taking into account whether or not this was the PSAP's choice, or if it was just the way the migration happened? Because I think, in most cases where the alley is still being used, it's not because the PSAP chose to continue using alley over the legacy 911 network. It's because when the migration happened, there was a problem in getting the alley migrated that was not necessarily the fault of the PSAP. Are you taking that into account, or are you talking about only applying this if the PSAP specifically chooses to keep alley on the legacy network?
It would only be if the PSAP specifically chooses to do alley on the legacy network, and by then PSAP chooses means their software equipment vendor or consultant makes that choice. I mean, if it's
their vendor has to make that adjustment. Daryl.
So
we can present and deliver a solution, and we are always ready. We'll deliver alley to the DMARC, and then what happens past the DMARC in terms of how a PSAP wants their service delivered is the decision of the PSAP. But yeah, if it's our fault, we wouldn't apply it.
Okay, and so in a case where it's Intrato's fault, but not Intrato on the CPE side, Intrato in their relationship with you as you provide BESP services, I think that's where we're going to have to start to really understand this. So I hear what you're saying, that if it's a CPE limitation configuration on my side of the demarcation and something that I need to change in my network, change in my delivery of calls as I'm managing my side of the ESInet, my side of the project, you're saying there's going to be double billing. You're going to have to pay for both those services until you can get LA migrated over. But in a case where we can't get LA migrated over, they're troubleshooting and they've got their CP vendor involved, and it ends up being an Intrato issue. And I'm not talking Intrato Viper support. I'm talking Intrato's ESInet, Intrato's network, Intrato as your BESP partner, are you going to then reimburse the PSAP and authority for the fees that they've paid on the tariff amount?
Intrado is us for this purpose, right? We're providing the service, and
Yep.
just so Converge One is the PSAP and Intrado is us, right? That's in terms of responsibility, that's where all that stuff lies.
Right. So like we have an example right now with one of the PSAPs. I'm going to just call it Sedgwick County because that's our most recent one. So Sedgwick County, they migrated, the ESInet's complete, but the alley couldn't move. They're troubleshooting alley issues with Intrado. We can't say that it's on the Viper side. We don't believe it's on the Viper side. We don't know where the problem's going to lie, but it very well could be on your side, you and Intrado. So
well, that's an important distinction, is that, yeah, if it's Intrado on the Viper side, that's on the PSAP DMARC.
That's my deal, right?
Yeah.
But I guess that's where this is going to be, and I appreciate us taking the time on this because I need everyone to hear this, is that what CenturyLink is saying is going to happen. And then if you have an alley issue, you're troubleshooting who made the change and the what and where was the problem. It sounds like that's going to be very critical because we could have a lot of money tied to it that we're being invoiced if alley didn't migrate.
Right, and I'm not technical enough to understand the ins and outs of all those things, but I think based on what you're saying, I agree with it. My understanding to this point has been the issue has been more that it's a choice by Converge One in terms of how their stuff is configured.
Right.
And so if that's the case, then we've got to do that. But like I said, I'm not fond of this issue from a technical, tariff, or customer relations point, because I don't think that I don't think we have justice in any of the solutions. It's not fair completely. It's not fair to continue to provide two services without us getting compensated for it, for that additional level of cost. It's not a good idea to have a bifurcated 911 system on ESInet and E911 delivery, but also we need to find solutions that help help us keep on schedule and help us work together to get these solutions implemented, as well as possible. So I mean, at this point, we've got to build this, but I just trying to be, transparent and I don't see the ideal solution just yet. I think the either not billing or double billing seems to me to be a binary choice that doesn't meet folks' needs. And so, but those are our choices. And given if we're at a binary choice of not billing and continuing to provide service, or billing and continuing to provide service, I'm going to come down on billing and billing consistent with the tariff. But I think we should work at a non-binary solution there.
Tim, I guess I would ask CenturyLink to consider another solution, which would be some sort of window to allow troubleshooting without all these gotchas, because I can tell you we were doing troubleshooting on an alley circuit that was down, and all we received from CenturyLink and Intrado was that it was on the Viper CP side, and at the end of the day, it wasn't our issue. It was your issue. And it took, I can't even tell you how many hours and time and testing on our end to try and show it wasn't our issue. I don't want people to be in that situation. And I also understand about providing service and a cost on your side. But in the case that we're talking about with the PSAPs that haven't migrated alley, I don't think anyone's choosing, at least I haven't been made aware that anyone's saying we want to keep it in the legacy environment. And if they're taking that position, that's definitely is out of scope of this project. We want to migrate all services and the system over to the ESInet, not some services remain legacy, some are on the new. But if CenturyLink would take back internally and talk about a 30-day window post-migration to clean up all of these outstanding issues, which would include migrating over Ellie, so that would be troubleshooting Ellie, because really, if you haven't migrated Ellie, you should be in a solution-driven mode to find a way to migrate Ellie, not a way to stay in a legacy environment. We had the same problem.
I think that's a fair request. I'll take it back to folks, and we'll talk about it. But my concern is testing. I think seems fair. Keeping a testing environment up seems fair, but it's and I think we're on the same page in terms of a testing environment versus a kind of request for a permanent or semi-permanent medium to long-term solution of continuing to run the two circuits. So I hear you, and we'll report back.
That would be great. So the other piece I wanted to just answer real quick, because we had some questions that were posed about not having a choice to convert Ellie, and really there isn't a choice here. Everything should be moving over. So you should be migrating over to the new network, and you migrate over that Ellie service as well. Where we've had situations with the migrations to date, we've had a few because of equipment placement, they couldn't migrate over, and the other examples in Jefferson County for Westminster and Broomfield, and then the other one I already mentioned, it's their troubleshooting. There's some troubleshooting that they need to do with the Ellie, and then they will migrate over later. So Westminster and Broomfield migrated over, I think it was about a month later, but they also got delayed because of COVID lockdowns. So it's a rare occasion so far that this has happened. It's not on every situation, but it has happened. So you won't be given a choice. 100% of the Ellie should be migrated over at the time of your migration with the system. So I just wanted to answer those questions in the chat. So great conversation. Tim, I appreciate you taking that request back to consider a 30-day window post-migration for PSAPs and their CPE vendors to contribute troubleshooting if they weren't able to migrate over Ellie for whatever reason. Again, could be on our end, it could be on your end, but in good faith working together for getting that over to the new ESInet. So we'll wait to hear back from you on that.
Okay.
And then the next item on the list is the CGIS vendor management. We had discussed about how techs showed up and then they weren't vendor management cleared through the CGIS environment. Cindy, you were gonna follow up. You stated before that you reached out to Entrado to make sure all installers were cleared per CGIS. Did they give you a confirmation? Can we expect when we run the techs that are coming on site to all be good to go? Where are we at with this?
So we have had a conversation with Entrado. They do know the requirement. They're working with the installers that come on site for the equipment placement is actually a third-party company. So they're working through that with them. I'll continue to check in with them to make sure they're pushing that forward.
Okay, and then so
I don't believe that it's completely closed yet. We may have some instances where we have to have that installer escorted, but we have emphasized the importance of it and that it is a requirement in the agreement that has to be supported.
Okay, and that would also be for CenturyLink techs as well. So I know Entrado, CenturyLink's obviously coming in and doing this circuit. Entrado's coming in and installing the equipment. So just if you could continue to have these conversations. In some cases, some of the agencies may not be doing the vendor management system, but I would say the majority of the PSAPs you work with are all CGIS compliant. Yeah, they're all CGIS compliant, so they should be requiring it. The only other item I wanted to bring up is something we've talked about this before. It's been on our issue tracker, and it's an item that has resurfaced, and it's just that coordination between CenturyLink and Entrado, who's on first kind of project controls and management, making sure the folks going out in the field understand what's going on with the project, because then they're relaying that information over to the PSAP, and it just has come back to me as a concern by some of those PSAP's authorities that have migrated or are preparing to migrate. So I wanted to ask Cindy if you have a project manager that was dedicated to you on the Intrado side. So for example, we were given a project manager for various Viper projects we're doing that are parallel to this migration to the ESInet, and having her coordinating the Intrado resources, even for the migration conversations about what we're doing, has been very helpful. But do you have somebody on the Intrado side that you're working with as well to coordinate those resources, or how is that information flowing to Intrado to kind of make this more symbiotic, good relationship and good information flow?
Yeah, so we have two, one being lead, Ken Van Hout and Luke Ulmer on the Intrado side, that are project managing the resources on the Intrado side. Ken takes lead on the schedules and working with me on what we've got scheduled where and when. They're leading on obviously the equipment install piece and the pre-migration testing. So they own, like, the calendar invites for pre-migration will come from them. And Luke is going to be sending you the one for Larimer County. By the way, I had that conversation this morning. But yeah, I think we have pretty good, and we have regular calls with them and a weekly call just to go through and make sure our schedules are synced up on what's being installed and where we're at and what we're moving around.
Okay, and so the gap could be then the third party group that Intrado's using to then go on site, communicate, the face of the project to the PSAPs and authorities. And so I'm not exactly sure where. I know that we, being a part of this project, have felt some gaps just trying to get, notice on who's showing up when, at what time, dates, all those little pieces. And then when they do show up, what they're saying is a concern. But this isn't just the LEDA project. I think everything for us is going pretty well. This is a theme that we've had. So maybe you and I can talk a little bit more about some specifics that I've received and maybe what we can do to kind of clean it up, because it's critical to the project that there's that tight coordination.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've had a couple of issues where we communicated a time frame and then the installers either came a couple hours early or an hour or two late. And that's definitely a concern when you've got, especially if someone's meeting them. That's a problem.
Okay, well, I'll regroup with you offline and we can talk through some more of those details and see if we can't find a good solution to tighten this up a bit. Those are all the items for today that we have on the discussion items spreadsheet. Does anybody else from the user group have any items they would like to add or bring up to CenturyLink? Okay, great. So Daryl, I think we can close this one out. If we want to go back over to the agenda, I think we are pretty much done. The other item we have next is the reporting tools. I think I may have skipped over that. I just wanted to bring up really quick, Cindy, that we did have a couple of PSAPs that have migrated that didn't get the email for reporting the reporting tools. I sent you an email about that, so I just wanted to follow up and make sure that that's still on your list to reach out to those PSAPs and get those contacts back so they can get those reporting tools.
Yes.
Okay, great. And so, sorry, Daryl, we have already done new business, so now we're up to open discussion, which would be any questions or concerns that anybody wants to bring up that we haven't already discussed. Okay. And then Cindy or the CenturyLink team, do you guys have anything from us that you need our immediate action or follow-up on that we haven't already covered?
No.
Okay. And then we just public comment before we adjourn. So anybody else that is a non-voting member that is on the call that wanted to bring something up, this is your opportunity.
Kimberly, this is Daryl. I just wanted to point out that now that we are getting closer to the end of this process, at least in terms of the current migration schedule that CenturyLink has been updating for us, it's very important that anybody who has not provided their initial information for the 911 grant program do so. I'm probably preaching to the choir. The people who have not provided the information are probably also not on this call. But just in case there are, I wanted to let you know Holly Bice is also on the call. She and I will be following up with those last remaining stragglers to make sure we get their information in so that they don't miss out on the opportunity of being reimbursed for the non-recurring costs of the migration.
Great, thank you. All right, anybody have anything else? Well, August is a busy month, so just a reminder that once you are 30 days within your migration, you'll get an invite for weekly calls. Mondays at 2, we really need you on those calls so we can make sure that everything is tracking good. They usually range between 30 to 40 minutes. Sometimes we go the full hour, but not all the time. So be looking for those invites when you're 30 minutes from migrating. And those that you're adding back in, Cindy will need to know those dates so we can make sure we get them on our call next week.
Okay.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for walking through all the items that are open, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.